All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. This is going to be a send-off video where we're going to examine a 25 comic modern pre-screen. For those of you that are unaware, the way I go about getting a high percentage of 9/8 comics in my collection or in my inventory is by sending CGC 25 comics at a time. They all have to be the modern tier, or I mean, you can do it in other tiers, but really it's most important in the modern tier. So 25 comics, all $400 or less fair market value in their current near mint raw state. And if you send 25 at a time, you're able to click a little button on the submission page that says pre-screen. And then you can set the pre-screen value to be 9.8, and then CGC will only encapsulate and charge you for the encapsulation of the comics that they think are that 9.8 pre-screen. The books that they do not think will make that grade get turned to you as a reject, and they charge you about $8 a piece for them. Some people are really against this idea of a pre-screen. Other people are okay with it. I think it's all right. I mean, they reject books that they don't think are 9/8. I don't think that the graders actually know what they're, if it's a pre-screen or not. I suspect the graders grade it and somebody down the line either says slab it or reject it after it comes out of the grading room. I don't know that for sure. CGC, of course, is a black box. They're not horribly transparent. But I can tell you after doing a number of these pre-screens, I think that the ones that get through are pretty fair most of the time. And certainly it's no different than my other CGC submissions, I don't think. But the reason I like doing this is it's $8 to have a book rejected. It's $24 to have a book graded 9.6 or 9.4 that you're going to crack and submit. And so usually when I get those rejects back and I average, maybe 17 I get through in a pre-screen, those books that come back, the 8 or so that are rejected, I'll carefully examine those, and maybe 2 or 3 of them I'll resend and they'll get 9/8 on the second pass. Probably 3 to 4 of those books in the pre-screen I shouldn't have sent in the first place, and I see a defect after I get them home and I examine them, and it makes a little bit more sense. Anyway, let's just rip through my pre-screen here. So this is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 22. I believe it is the first appearance of the Speedball, who becomes one of the members of the New Warriors. I think this book has been one of these Marvel first appearances that's kind of gone unnoticed. So not only is this annual one of the square-bound issues, which makes it a little bit harder to get in 9/8, particularly from this era and this particular book construction, it does feature a character that I think is a little bit goofy and might have some 90s nostalgia with it. So I think it's one, not only that because it's a Daredevil Spider-Man book, but also because it's the first appearance of Speedball that's worth slabbing. I've had about 2 or 3 9/8s before, and they always seem to leave my collection about as fast as I get them. And so one that I'm happy to resend here. The Armor Wars, we know, is coming through the MCU. This is one of the Armor War 1 variants. There are a lot of different copies of Armor War number 1. This one I picked up. I'm just going to hopefully get this and see if somebody is really excited to get it in 9/8 when the Armor War drops. I kind of like it just because it has got a lot of white space. This one would be a great one to get signed if you were looking to go to a con. And I think a lot of people like to buy those ahead of time in 9/8. So that they have some confidence it'll get a 9/8 on the return trip, which, by the way, isn't necessarily true, but certainly the probability is higher. Gotham Adventures number 50. So I'm a huge fan of Batman the Animated Series. This is a Darwin Coke cover. It's a very popular one with Catwoman and Batman, very late in the Gotham Adventures, so it's a slightly lower print run. I picked this up at a show in somebody's box, and I got it home, and I looked it over, and I was like, I think this one might be a 9/8, and so I'm going to send that one, mostly because I'm a huge Batman Animated Series fan. I think this one will make the 9/8. I think the others two will as well. This one I think is going to be 50-50 on the 9/8. I think realistically it's maybe a 9/6 plus. Hopefully I hid the couple of very light spine ticks. The DC books of this era where you have this nice white border along the edge, I've got a better chance of puffing and ironing and then pressing. And that seems to hide some of the very, very fine non-color breaking spine ticks, good enough to get them 9/8. So I'm optimistic for this one. I picked this one up at a local comic shop just because it was so crisp, and I thought I might be able to snag a 9/8 out of it. For those of you that love checking out color and variants, this book is notorious for having a huge number of different toners that were used, which give it slightly different tones to the Batman, slightly different tones to Bruce's dad's coat, and sometimes there's ink bleed through here in this book. And so this is one where if you're being a stickler for eye appeal, you might want to give a little bit of a close look to. This one I dug out of a dollar bin. It is The Hobbit #1. I'm a huge D&D fan and a huge Tolkien fan, and you know, I was excited just to send this one. This one I do not think is going to make it. I think this one's going to be a reject. I think it has a number of very, very small defects that when added together make it closer to a 9.4. But we're going to submit it and see if CGC picks up on those or not. Certainly I'd be very excited to get that one. It's a little bit rare of a 9.8 and a very cool. This one is the kind of infamous George Perez reprinting of the JLA Avengers. So this is reprinted very shortly before George Perez passed away. These immediately when they came out spiked to several $100s a piece, and I was lucky enough to pick one up. So I'm in Indiana. The comic shop I got this from was Circle City Comics down on Michigan and 86th Street. I was very excited. They did something that I thought was quite classy. You know, these were really hard to get. They were oversubscribed, they were underprinted, and they took everybody who did a pre-order on them, put them into a raffle, and did the raffle live on Facebook. And, you know, I was very excited that they pulled my name out of the hat, but I thought that that was a lot classier than just jacking it up to 10 times market or 10 times cover price and waiting for somebody to pay it. And so I both liked their approach to dealing with it, and I was super excited to be, they only had about a third of the people that pre-ordered them actually got one. And by the way, I didn't even think about CGCing this. I actually bought it to read the thing, but I saw somebody on Facebook or Instagram posted one of these in a 9.8 slab, and I didn't think that they'd actually slab that because it's pretty fat, but it turns out CGC does do trade backs. So, so I figured I'd send that one because I never even touched it. So. All right, here is Marvel Age number 71. This is the prequel to the Mobius Stan Lee Silver Surfer Parable two-parter. And the Marvel Age series is great because it has a lot of these previews in it, and some collectors think that those are the quote, true first appearances. So Darkhawk has one of those. I forgot what the issue of Marvel Age is. As does, there's a preview for the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, I want to say in issue 90. Anyway, but these are, you know, I think have often been overlooked, and they're very, very hard to find in high grade or 9.8s. And I think this one might make the snuff for a 9.8. It does have, I think, two incredibly faint spine ticks, but I think that those will get overlooked, and fingers crossed this one will make the 9.8. I have two copies of Marvel Presents #1 in here, Wolverine. This copy I just keep seeing pop up online more and more lately. I don't think it's a key first appearance. I think people just really like the Wolverine cover, and it is a wraparound that has Man-Thing and the Silver Surfer on the back. And so, you know, I got two of these, and I'm optimistic one of them is going to make that 9.8. But again, in the 9.8 pre-screen, you know, these in like a 9.2 or a 9.4 are not going to demand a premium in a slab. And so I think these are really great examples of comics that you want to be sending in a 9.8 pre-screen. As is this one, by the way. So Secret Invasion we know is coming up in the MCU. This is a third printing sketch variant here of Secret Invasion #2. I don't think there's anything special about this other than it's a hard to find sketch third printing. And I think Hawkeye and the what is it, Mockingbird are going to be key characters in that. So fingers crossed, I'll be right and I'll be able to, you know, spec on that one. I picked this up just out of, you know, an LCS's box, and hopefully after a press it'll make that 9.8. But I think this is another good example of why you want to send things as a 9.8 pre-screen, because certainly this book in a 9.4 or, you know, a 9.2 is not going to be highly sought after or desired. So really the only reason to slab it is if it comes back that 9.8 grade. Same is going to be true here with a couple of Secret Wars #1s. So this is really the third Secret Wars. So you had Marvel Superhero Secret Wars from the 80s, and then you had Marvel Superhero Secret Wars #2, which was kind of a sequel to that. And then, you know, and I believe this is the 2015 version. It was kind of restarted here. And it's unclear to me at this stage which one the MCU show or movie Secret Wars is going to be based off of, but I know people really like these Scotty Young covers, and you know, not only is Doom growing in popularity, there's just a lot of nuggets in this one, including the Hulk being ready to throw Wolverine over the top here, and of course Deadpool killing everybody, which is a nice homage to Deadpool kills the MCU. And so this cover is really nice. And it's one of, I think, the more popular Scotty Young covers, so we're going to send that one. And then this one we just love because it's Deadpool, and so we're going to go ahead and send that one too. And then issue number 2 does have a first appearance to Spec On in the Secret Wars run. I forget what the character's name is, but it is one that made the list, and as long as I had a bunch of them, I'm going to go ahead and send that one as well. One here going back to the 90s is the Simpsons comic. This is the newsstand variant of this, and so I think those are substantially harder to find than the direct copy. This is a book that got really hot in 2021 and early 2022 and has since cooled off, but I think it's going to be a good one. I'm unclear if this one's going to make it there because it does have this little mark there, and I don't think that that's a spine tick. I think somebody cut into the box with that or nicked the spine in some other way. So this one's a probable reject, but I'm going to send it anyway because it only cost me $8 to have it rejected instead of wondering for the rest of my life if it would have made that 9.8 grade or not. Probably one of the most famous covers here from the early 90s is the Todd McFarlane Torment cover. This thing has been homaged, near countless times. And this happens to be the green variant. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, there's a green, gold, and silver variant of this cover. And they do come in either the direct or the newsstand and polybagged or whatever. But the newsstand versions of these do demand a slightly higher premium. And I was able to pick this one up. And so we're going to go ahead and send that. I already have a 9.8 newsstand of the green background in the PC. And so that one will be for resale if it comes back in 9.8. Speaking of the Silver Surfer Mobius Stan Lee Parable, this is going to be the 2-part trade paperback that I picked up. And again, I didn't know until recently that CGC would grade trade paperbacks, but they do. And this one, I don't think had ever been opened or read, and I think it's a slightly unusual trade paperback. And so we're going to go ahead and send that one off and hopefully get a 9.8 and enjoy that one as part of the PC. If it comes back declined, then that'll be okay too, because that'll be my reader copy then of the pair. Star Wars Empire number 7 we're going to send off just because it's a Boba Fett cover, and who doesn't love a good Boba Fett cover. Heir to the Empire number 5 is not one of the key issues from Heir to the Empire, but it is the much harder to find newsstand version. I got this also in a dollar box essentially, and I was surprised to see how good of a condition it was, particularly in the newsstand. So that one will get sent off. For those of you like me that grew up in the 90s, you probably played the X-Wing TIE Fighter video games, kind of as LucasArts was spinning off. And I played the heck out of both X-Wing and TIE Fighter, and then X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. And then later on, when Fantasy Flight Games had their X-Wing miniature tabletop game, I got really into that for a hot second. Anyway, I really love the dogfighting aspect of the Star Wars space battles and all the X-Wings and stuff like that. And so this series, Star Wars X-Wing, I think is an underappreciated run from the early Dark Horse years. And it's just kind of classic Top Gun sort of, a hodgepodge of, hot boy pilots trying to one up each other with mediocre scripts and mediocre art, but overall it's quite endearing, and I'm a pretty big fan of it. So this is going to be the first appearance of Baron Fell, who's one of the main TIE Fighter pilots in the series, and then this is going to be, I believe, Tycho's first appearance, which is one of the key A-Wing pilots from the story. And so these are two, really kind of minor keys, but since I happen to have them and they happen to both be in very high grade, I figured why not send them and see if we can get a 9.8 on those. Following up with that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures. Now, there's nothing special about this issue either, other than it's very late in this run. So I believe this series goes through issue 72, and certainly everything above about issue 50 is much more scarce. It's very common to be able to pick up about the first 20 or so issues of this run, but those last 15 to 20 issues are really scarce, and they're exceptionally scarce and high grade. And so when I pulled this one out of my box and gave it a quick look, I was absolutely astounded to see that I thought it might make a 9.8. So I gave it a quick press, and we're going to see if CGC agrees. Coming on up here is Thor 338. So this is the middle issue and the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill, which of course is Thor 337, very famous Walt Simonson cover. The key aspect of Thor 338 is it is the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill's Hammer the Stormbreaker. And of course, Stormbreaker is already in the MCU, so we'll see if we can land a 9.8 on that book. Now, I personally am a huge Stan Sakai fan, and I'm a big fan of Usagi Yojimbo. The story is not always original, but it's almost always very well laid out. It's super easy to read. It's often quite fun, and overall the story that's being told is quite endearing. And so I very much so appreciate the Usagi Yojimbo series. And this issue is from a little bit later in the Dark Horse run, which I believe is volume 3. And in this issue, it's a very special one because Usagi Yojimbo participates in the tea ceremony. So we're going to send that off and see if we can get a 9.8 on that copy. And then this is a little bit later in the Dark Horse run. Now, as you go from about issue 100 to about 165, where this series ends, the print run got smaller and these become a lot harder to find. And then, of course, then they become even harder to find in high grade. And this particular copy is one of my favorite covers of the run because Usagi Yojimbo, you just get this feeling like he is soaked through and just very pouty in the rain. And I just really love the contrast with the toad here and the earth, being able to look at him. And so it's just one that I latched onto, and I just appreciated the tonal variations as well as the art and the perspective. And anyway, we're going to send that one and see if it's a 9.8. By the way, there are only 2 other 9.8s of this one that were registered in the census at this recording, and I happen to grade both of them. So we're going to see if I can go for the hat trick. Now, speaking of George Perez, this is going to be the 25th comic book in our series. This one I don't think is actually going to make the 9.8. I think it's going to get bounced, but we'll send it and see. This is the Wonder Woman reboot with George Perez, and kicks off its own unique era of Wonder Woman. And so we're going to see if we can get this one in a 9.8 as a Wonder Woman #1. All right, so that's it for these 25 comics. It's going to be a while for them to come on back, but fingers crossed we'll get some 9.8s out of the stack. Again, my historical average is about 18 or so out of the 25, and fingers crossed we'll hit that. So if you enjoy seeing these, please leave a comment. Wish me some luck on them. Of course, subscribe. So there's a subscribe button somewhere right around here, probably on your screen. So go ahead and click that subscribe. It's free to you, and I genuinely appreciate it. So take care, everybody. All right, howdy folks, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. We've got an unboxing here. So this is a fresh, brand new, gigantic size slab box from CGC. This was a modern comic, 25 comic pre-screen. The good news is that we have a bunch of 9.8s in here because that's what we pre-screened for. The bad news is, I know for sure based on the size of the bill, that it was not 100% successful. Actually, I think it's going to be one of my lower percentage 9.8 pre-screens that I've done in a very long time. And even though sometimes I do get antsy and check those grader notes before I do the unboxing, in this particular case, I have no idea which of my books made the 9.8 grade. And so let's just slice it open and find out. And then we'll go look at the 9.8 rejects under the bright light and see if we can come up with a reason why they might not have made the 9.8s. So we've got lots of packing material here. More packing material. And the first one up here, ooh, this one's a special one. You can tell from how it's in there. Oh, I'm very happy that this made it. So I did get the 9.8 on the JLA Avengers thick trade paperback, the George Perez. So this one I'm actually very excited about. It is a crazy big slab case, but I know CGC is going to start doing pulps. So I bet you this is the pulp prototype slab case that they are using for the trade paperback. Very cool here. JLA Avengers 2022 George Perez edition 9.8. So very cool about that. I'm going to put that one over here because that case seems like it's going to be slightly more breakable than normal perhaps. All right, and just because I have no idea which ones I submitted or what, let's just start here randomly in the middle. Okay, this one was the Secret Wars #2, 9.8, so very cool there. Can't remember why I sent this one, but it was on somebody's spec list. So right on up, ooh, we got 2 here. So 9.8 Secret Invasion #2, 3rd printing sketch cover. So that one's pretty nice. Ooh, this one I'm happy about here. So this is the Silver Surfer Parable Preview and Marvel Age, so it's a Mobius cover. That's the Stan Lee story, Mobius art. It's a very good two-parter. If you're a Silver Surfer fan, it's a must-read. Let's just see what we got here. Oops, Simpsons, and this is the newsstand edition, which they have now correctly put on there. So we got a newsstand Simpsons #1 with the barcode, 9.8, very cool there. Does not include the poster because it was the newsstand variety, not the collectible direct edition. Let me see here. We have Star Wars Empire #7. Just threw that one in there because it's a Boba Fett cover, so very cool about that. Let me see here. This one is a Usagi Yojimbo. I'm a big Usagi fan, and this I think is one of the better covers from the Dark Horse run. If you follow Usagi, you know he does a lot of wandering and ends up getting rained on quite a bit, and this looks like quite a soak through Usagi, and I really like the contrast of the background color with the color up front on the frog or toad there. So very cool about that one. This one is another Usagi. So this is issue 93 from the Dark Horse run. This is the one where Usagi participates in the tea ceremony, which is a kind of a special moment. And it's a big departure in the story as he leaves some friends and shifts focus. So this one's pretty cool. There were only 2 other copies of this on the census, and I'm the goon who's now graded all 3 of them. So that's pretty entertaining, at least for me. All right, this one is a very cool one to see there. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures ran for quite a bit. And so for those of you that don't know, typically the first 20 or so issues are relatively easy to find. Those that creep up past about number 50 are quite more rare because the print run dropped off. And those above like, 65-ish, right in this range, are darn near impossible. And so this one is pretty hard to find in the 9.8, so that's very cool. Obviously a Turtles fan as well. Big Star Wars fan, so I played the X-Wing video game a lot as a kid, and then I played the Fantasy Flight board game a lot, and so I really love this series. So this one I pulled out and it looks really, really crisp, so I sent it. So a 9.8 on that one, very cool, very excited about that. Let's see what else we got here. We have, Star Wars Heir to the Empire #5, 9.8 newsstand. Very big fan of this trilogy. Had the original tattered paperback from the 90s signed by Tim Zahn at C2E2, so very cool. He even checked it and noticed it was a first print, which I didn't notice. It was just the tattered copy I had as a kid, so it was very fun. All right, so yeah, very cool to have this one. I did get my Heir to the Empire #1 signed, although it is not a 9.8. It is definitely more tattered. And then, of course, the all-famous and all-popular Spider-Man #1 newsstand green cover. And that looks like that about does it for our 9.8s. So that means that we have what look like 2 big bundles here of raw books to investigate. And so let's open those on up, and then we can see how we did here. If I counted right, there should be 14. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, maybe I'm miscounting. There's 12, not 14. That's really bad. Oh well, that's how it goes. See which rejects we have here. Just cut through that tape. Let's see here. We've got Armor Wars #1 rejected. And we'll have to figure out why that one is. I thought that one would have been a 9.8. This one, I think I was expecting the Hobbit #1. That one was pretty sure it's closer to a 9.0 copy. Marvel Comic Presents #1. That's sad. I was hoping to snag one of those. Both copies. That's pretty lame. Amazing Spider-Man Annual. Very disappointing. Both my Batman books. So that is a bummer. And let's see what's in the next one. I thought I got billed for 14. I only see 12, so that is disappointing. We've got Secret Wars #1. Womp womp. Secret Wars #1. Womp womp. Silver Surfer Parable. This one I was pretty sure should have been a 9/8, so we're going to have to look at that one pretty closely. Wonder Woman, I was not surprised. That one I thought had a spine tick. This one I think had a couple of spine ticks. This one I'm surprised about. I don't think I would have sent this one if I didn't think it was a full 9/8. Alright, anyway, that's how it goes here, team. Let's take a peek at these rejects under the bright light here in a minute. Alright, I've had some time to look these books over, and I think that there's some important lessons for us to learn about our own submissions. So when I get rejects back, one thing I always like to do is evaluate them and go back over them and look for stuff that I might have missed. One thing that CGC clearly missed, which I'm quite irate about, is these two books, the Batman Gotham Adventures and the Batman 404, clearly show up on my invoice as being 9/8. So Batman Gotham Adventures 9/8, Batman 404 Modern 9/8. So these two books were evaluated by a CGC grader, and they were scored 9/8, and CGC failed to encapsulate them. So I'm going to have to deal with CGC customer service and send those back in. The other thing is that my Star Wars Heir to the Empire, which is clearly a newsstand copy, was missed being marked as a newsstand. And so that's unfortunate. There is a direct copy of this book, and the newsstand is often much more highly sought after because, again, it's a mid-90s book where the newsstands were quite rare. So I have two beefs with this order in addition to what I'm about to talk about here. And so this is going to be probably one of my worst CGC submissions, and it'll probably be my last for a significant period of time. So this Armor Wars here is not a 9/8 book because there's a massive finger bend right there. And I don't think I would have missed something that is that egregious in a 9/8 send. I mean, that is more than a little bit of a tick. That comes off the side of that spine by more than a ½ inch, and it splinters. And I think CGC did that. This one was not a really strong 9/8 candidate. It had some issues down here on the corner, and I kind of figured that this one might not be. There's some issues up there. So this one was kind of a Hail Mary send anyway, so I'm not surprised that that one was declined. Both my copies here of Marvel Comic Presents I thought were really strong contenders, but if I look very, very closely right here, you can see just a faintest spine tick right there. I don't know if that was enough to bounce it or not, but if I feel it along the spine, I can kind of feel it there too. But it, again, goes pretty far in the back here, and again, I don't think that's the kind of thing I would have missed, but maybe I did on that one. I certainly did not on the white one, because I definitely would not send moderns like that had really any noticeable defect, and that thing jumps off from more than a little bit away. Coincidentally, all of these spine ticks that I missed are in exactly the same spot on these books, which makes me even more suspicious. So if you check out where all three of these spine ticks are, it's not like they're randomly distributed down the spines. They are exactly in the same spots, right here, right there, and right there. And so I think somebody put their thumb through this stack of comics, to be perfectly honest with you. This one, I don't know if they're just calling this dark mark right here a reason to reject it. That could be. You know, there's a little bit up there. There's nothing else really wrong with this book, but maybe, you know, just this little bit right there is enough to keep it. So keep it out of being a 9/8. Oh well on that one. These, I believe, have the spine tick pretty much in exactly the same spot I found. Oh, no, this one I think I'm going to send again. I have no idea why this book is rejected. You know, all the corners are pretty tight. That looks to me to be a binding tear. You know, there's nothing too surprising about that. This corner looks pretty tight. I don't feel, maybe there's a really small tick right here. Maybe that's it. So anyway, these are definitely not worth sending a second time, as fun as they are. So there we go. This one, I honestly did miss a couple of things. So there's a pretty deep divot right there that I'm sure I overlooked because it's in the middle of the book. And there's actually what looks like a little bit of pen scratch right here. See if you can find it right there in the glare. So there's a couple of those on this back cover that are really light, and I must have just missed them. So that's on me. This one, again, has a spine tick in that exact same spot right here. So as we scroll down, you know, it was really easy for me to start finding all the defects because they're all at exactly the same spot. About 65 to 70% of the way down the spine, there happens to be a convenient spine tick. And so that is a really odd coincidence to me. All right, this one I honestly missed some stuff. So if we look in the glare here, you can see it has a little bit of this splotching right here, and that there's a little bit of an area there. So I must have, you know, not looked at this under the glare and just looked down the spine. Oh well on that one. This one I think I honestly missed as well, because there is a little bit of a bend right there on the back cover that I must have just missed. So I might try to iron that and repress it and see if I can get it on a resubmit. I have no idea how this big dent there made it past me though. I mean, that's pretty obvious. So, you know, what's I would say more frustrating about this is really these two that should have been 9/8 on the sheet. And the other thing that's really frustrating about this is, you know, I can see that spine tick is in exactly the same spot on all of these books. So personally, I'm quite irritated about that, and I'll be calling CGC in the morning, but this is what it is. At least hopefully these will come back in 9/8, and I'll be able to share that with you when they do. We'll see. All right, howdy folks. This is going to be a two-part CGC unboxing. So hopefully right here we have the 3 books that we sent in for mechanical error. One of them was just missing the newsstand label, which honestly, if that was it, I wouldn't even have bothered with. But the other 2 were returned to me raw, which should be pretty big egg on the face for CGC. I was told that they would give them a quick one-over and hopefully honor the prior 9/8 grade. So let's see and find out if that's the case or not. There's an invoice, which is nice. Got some packing materials. Let's pull out the first one. There we go. That looks a heck of a lot better. So Batman, The Gotham Adventures number 50, 9.8 grade. We paid for the first time. By the way, I'll point out in between this, so these were actually graded by CGC about January 23rd or 24th. By the time they made it to me, I mailed them back to CGC and they were checked in with mechanical error. It was about February 8th. It is now end of May, so it took CGC a long time for these mechanical errors, which made me partially, actually more than partially, but quite very grouchy. So the next one here is our Heir to the Empire number 5. Let me see here. Now it does correctly say newsstand edition. And again, you know, if that were me, I wouldn't even bother with this if this were the only one. It was really the other 2 I was sending them in for. And as long as I was grouchy about those, I was going to have them correct that one. All right, this is the big one. Batman number 404, 9.8 white pages. There we go. That is exactly what I wanted to see. So, you know, I guess this one ended well. You know, all things being considered, it could have ended a lot worse. I will point out, you know, CGC on average does have customer service. If I have one major complaint about CBCS, it is their completely non-existent customer service department. CGC is much better for that. They have extended hours now for people over the phone, which is awesome. I think you can call them up till 8 p.m. Eastern. It used to be 5, which was quite early for those of you on the West Coast. That's a lot better. In general, the turnaround times have also gotten a lot better. And so that's kind of miraculous. I hope that they knock down the mechanical error wait line and do pay attention to that. It's extremely frustrating for them to have a screw up and then have it take months for them to fix it while they're turning around orders. So over this time, I think I've had 5 or 6 CGC orders go through, and all those got processed and worked on before the mechanical errors. And so at least if it were me, I would prefer they fix their mistakes before taking more money from new clients for new orders. But I don't make all the rules. So, you know, that's how it goes. This one I think I can be happy with. Thank you for sticking with me to the second unboxing part of this CGC unboxing. You know, as always, leave a thumbs up on the channel, leave a thumbs up on the video, like, subscribe, follow, find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for your attention. Share it with a friend.